When we look at global power, our attention is immediately drawn to the visible figurehead. The earthly monarch, draped in regalia, acts as a ceremonial ringmaster. They are designed to hold the public gaze, performing diplomatic duties and absorbing historical scrutiny. Behind that public-facing executive sits a completely different entity. The Crown Corporation operates as an unaccountable, supra-national board of directors, designing policies from the shadows. Geographically and legally, this board is anchored in the City of London. It exists as a state within a state, a sovereign legal fortress that operates entirely outside the standard jurisdiction of the United Kingdom. This setup creates an obvious problem for modern governance. Citizens believe they live in sovereign democracies, voting on the rules of their society. Yet those localized rules are dictated by an entity completely immune to the laws it enforces. Absolute control does not require military occupation. It requires drafting the legal frameworks that govern a population. The law writer physically constructs the enclosure for the subjects. The pen is the penitentiary, and its construction began centuries ago. The modern power structure traces its origins back to the Knights Templar. History records them as holy crusaders, but in practice they were early international bankers. They built a highly organized, borderless network of wealth management. They amassed vast amounts of physical wealth and held the debts of European royalty. However, maintaining overt military outposts and holding physical gold made them highly visible. That visibility became a severe liability. By 1307, European monarchs recognized this independent shadow state as a threat. Facing exposure and imminent destruction, the Templars needed an exit strategy. They faked their own demise. By orchestrating a strategic collapse, they shed their physical, militarized vulnerability. They survived by evolving into a subtle administrative network. This administrative expertise found a permanent home in the developing English legal system, operating out of the Temple Church in London. These stone walls mark a historical pivot, where the sword of physical force was traded for the pen of legal authorship. For an elite organization to achieve immortality, it must remain invisible. Sacrificing physical force for the untouchable authority of the law ensures survival across multiple historical cycles. Operating from their sovereign base in London, this board expanded its reach. They deployed chartered companies, highly specialized corporate subsidiaries acting on behalf of the central authority rather than extensions of a national government. The Virginia Company was granted a very specific mandate. It was deployed to construct an enclosure in North America, populating it with contracted servants bound by legally enforced debt. This animated flow network maps the legal trap. Every ounce of primary profit and labor value generated by that workforce was legally forced to exit the colonial territory, funneling directly back to the corporate board in London. Meanwhile, the East India Company operated as a heavily armed corporate navy, functioning as a distinct sovereign entity with its own military capabilities. Their mandate was entirely different. They were tasked with guarding the Pacific Gate, actively gatekeeping vital maritime routes to monopolize global resource extraction. Global colonization was a coordinated corporate strategy. It was an asset management operation, using legal contracts to physically build the walls of a managed enclosure, ensuring all primary capital flowed back to a sovereign center. As the era of open colonization ended, the board refined its architecture to ensure its power remained immortal across the coming centuries. It took the original Templar roles, the management of secret lore and the transfer of cross-border wealth, and split them into two specialized modern branches. The Freemasons became the keepers of the lore. Their lodges serve as the modern temples where the board's ritualistic and legal ciphers are preserved, ensuring the institutional memory of the game survives through every political regime change. The second branch, the Rothschild family, assumed the role of hereditary treasurers. By providing the liquidity for the industrial shifts of the 19th century, they secured the board's dominance over the world's central banks. Controlling this liquidity allowed them to construct a financial penitentiary. They used central banks to move power away from land and kings, instead incarcerating entire nations within a system of endless debt. This chart of control begins with the primary financial fortress in the City of London, the Bank of England. This structure was replicated in the United States via the Federal Reserve, effectively building the modern walls of the American pen through a debt-based currency system. Inside this structure, voting serves as an administrative formality. While pawns focus on political theater, the board dictates the underlying financial parameters that ensure no one ever leaves the enclosure. The City of London remains an untouchable jurisdictional vacuum, authoring these rules from safely above the law. The board has spent centuries perfecting this cycle of metamorphosis, moving from knights to corporate directors to modern financiers. As the entity prepares for its next rebranding, the public remains trapped as inmates as long as they fail to recognize who truly holds the pen.